All right. So, awakening doesn't mean anything. It has no implications or definition. Or objective qualities or subjective qualities. So I'm never really talking about it. I'm never really talking about awakening. Within the limitations of the point of view that's looking to understand it. What I'm doing is I'm describing my experience, and in that there seems to be a recognition at some point of the limited point of view. At a very paradoxical level, there's a recognition there. And all I'm really doing is pointing to a function, just a function in thought. It seems real until it's not. But that thought function essentially is like a subjective point of view that will continually reinforce its own felt sense of reality by relating to objective qualities, relating to meanings and definitions and implications as that relates back to me, the one holding this point of view. And it's strange because a lot of the time that's already happened by the time we start relating to something called awakening. It's like already happened when we take a position and then relate to something called awakening and say that awakening means this, or when I objectively confirm these qualities or meanings, then that will confirm to me, the subject, that this is awakening, or awakening is this definition, or it means this, and so on. Well, it's a very automatic, it's like a precursor a lot of the time to talking about this, but there's something important about that there's a felt sense of realness, a felt sense of meaning or implication or reality assumed in that point of view. It's like a relation to or a reaction to thought or objectivity or concept or identification with the objective conceptual understanding from that point of view, from the felt to be real sense of the subject. The important part is that, is there belief in that? Does that feel real? Is that because, like I say frequently, nothing is excluded from this. Like, there aren't parts to this to be able to label it as something or define it or comprehend it. Which means that those objective thoughts, those concepts, there's nothing inherently wrong or unawake with them, of course. But it's what it feels like that's relating to them, and you know, the felt sense of reality to the one holding a point of view or position. As that fades away, then there's freedom to occupy any point of view or position or experience any sort of conceptual understanding, because there's no weight to it. It doesn't mean anything. There's no real meaning in it. So there's no holding on to it. It will just come and go. Thought will just be thought. There won't be anything to it in any real sense of me in there. Having to know, having to relate to it, to make something of this. Like there's no thing. There's no need to make a thing of it. And there's like a massive freedom in that and releasing that, because then we're not resisting anything. We're not resisting any part of this. So something that's confusing is, and I'm not going to be able to really clear this up, by giving you a point of view or something like that, but some conceptual understanding helps in direction sometimes, but you hear often that the sense of self drops away, it disappears, or the experience of subject object drops away, it disappears, it's not there anymore. And from that subjective position, you can't see that. That doesn't make sense. It's not. What we're talking about with that is transcending and inclusive of that subjective position. Or you hear like the subject, the sense of the thinker drops away. It's not there anymore. But I mean, that's with everything in this. It is true, but it's also not true. It's half true. It's a paradox. It's both true and untrue at the same time. So I'll describe my experience with it. So how I would describe it is that in my experience now, there isn't a subject-object split. It's not really there. But what's clear is the function, the augmentation that can be there to make it look like that as a functionality, as a thought. Like that doesn't drop away. It drops away in its reality. So it's not really there anymore in any real way, in any solid, concrete way it is way. But so you don't lose that. You just see that it was never there in the first place, in the way that it was suggesting its own reality. That's why I can say that White House is over there and it's about 50 metres away. I might have to use that thought function at some point, say if I was doing something that required measuring relative distance. If that wasn't accessible to me anymore, I wouldn't be able to function. So it's just not like that. So if we're waiting for something to disappear, it never disappears because it's not there in the first place. Same with the sense of self. People say my name, I say yes. I interact with the world as an individual. But that's not really what this is. That's not real. That's not the most real aspect of experience. That's just an aspect of experience. It's a story, it's a thought. You know, if those faculties, those mental faculties, stopped permanently, then I'd just be an unresponsive vegetable, not interacting with the world. And that's what people fear, that, because from that subjective position, that's all you can imagine. You can only imagine, well, you can't imagine it, but you can only imagine a limited version of it, and about what it means to me, the subject. But what I'm talking about is transcending of that completely. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. There's no implication to it. There's no value to it. There's no personal attainment in it. It just doesn't matter. It's too simple. It's way too simple. And when we start framing things in that subject-object with felt reality, it's already happened. You know, the illusion has already asserted itself as the way it is, with importance. So in that view, any view, there's always going to be a limitation. I mean, this is too free to exclude anything. Anything in experience whatsoever across the board. It's inexclusive of any of it. But the big thing is the thought. There's something that's happening in thought that when we start struggling with this, it's already happened. We're already looking from that. That function has already asserted itself and suggested a way it is. This is the way it is. So what I'm talking about isn't a way. It's no way and always at the same time. So you're free to adopt any of the subjective relational objective experiences, because it's clear that it's not real. It's just not real. So there you go, the problem's solved. Anything goes. It's fine. It's that struggle with relativity, the struggle with a more real, more free, more awake experience, which doesn't exist. Something that never really happened stops happening in a real way. Something that never really happened stops happening in a real way. So an illusion falls away in its reality with something that something stops. And what stops is the felt reality of this subject-object experience, of this me relating to the world. In one way, it completely falls away. It's gone. But that comes about through clear seeing that it was never there in the first place. So nothing really happened. How paradoxical is that? Nothing really happened. And that's why I feel deeply it just doesn't matter. That's why I don't really have an agenda here. With this, it just doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So when I look over here, I can see 3 houses, a tree, cars going by. Those are thoughts. Those aren't real. They're real on one level, on the relative level. But there's something more real than that. But I can't even label that real or unreal because it is not a point of view. It's like the point of view appears as part of the whole. How unsatisfying a description is that? How vague is that? Like, what? What are you talking about? That makes no sense. It doesn't make sense. And it's that relative, subjective point of view is never reconciled. It's never reconciled. It's never confirmed from that subjective position. This is awakening. I see it now. I use language like that as a tool. But that's never what happens. That whole thing stops. It stops in a way. It stops in a way that's real. But then it continues. In the way it always has, because that was never important. It was never actually important. So you hear that non-dual teacher say it was always this way. Enlightenment was always here. This is just about clarity. When we see the function, it's very simple. It's like it's very paradoxical. Because nothing gets outside of the function. There was nothing inside the function in the first place. Nothing gets outside of it. But somehow that function comes into clarity for what it is. Which in a way it was never actually here, never actually happened. There was a continual suggestion. When that felt real, that suggestion, that function had already happened in an automatic sense. We'd already passed that point, so to speak. So there was a discussion in the comments with someone who was talking about the radical non-dual message. We were talking about how it's flawed, and you know, these things they can have their uses at specific times, but of course it's limited. But it's like they're to speak more truthfully about this, you would either have to not speak at all, or you would have to contradict everything you say in the objective sense. So like, there is awakening, there isn't awakening. There's a subject and an object, there isn't a subject and an object. I mean, that might be effective, I don't know. just contradicting yourself constantly, which is, I guess, what I do a lot. But if you take part of this from any of these videos, from a relative, in the context of relativity, from a subjective position, it will miss the point. There's a totality to this message that the words can't quite touch, which is why I contradict myself frequently. And sometimes the language might lend itself to directing attention or investigation in a specific aspect of this function that gives rise to the illusory experience of the real individual. but other times it might be completely different. So which is what's quite fun about doing this, because I'm never describing something. I'm never describing something. It's just words. Just sound. Just thought. The symbolic meaning behind that, which ultimately doesn't mean anything. And then, where's the fun in knowing what this is? Like, that'd be a bit shit, wouldn't it? If you suddenly became, cognitively omniscient, such that you could, that subjective position could understand every aspect of this mystery, then it's not a mystery anymore. Then there's nothing transcendent anymore. Anyway, I'm gonna have to go now, but same as last time, really good comment, so yeah, let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you next time.